Thank you, Pete. It's my honor to introduce Nancy Muñoz, who is our New Jersey Assemblywoman. Nancy got a Bachelor of Science degree from Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York, where my wife also went to school, but in the old school, not the new school, new campus. She then got a master's degree from Hunter College, all in nursing. So if any of us have any issues this morning, just call out for Nancy. She's a very accomplished person with regard to her service. She's been a Republic Assemblywoman since 2009. She has spoken to us before in 2017 and has come back. So that's, she gets the E for effort in that regard. She's currently the Deputy Minority, the Republican Budget Officer of the Assembly. She was the Deputy Minority Leader in 22-23, Conference Leader in 2019-21, Republican Whip from 17 to 19, Deputy Conference Leader to 16-17. So she has been in office for a long time, but not sitting on her hands. She's moving up the ladder here. Who knows where she may go? So with that, I'd like to introduce Nancy Muñoz.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here. I knew I had been here before, but I didn't realize it was 2017, so thank you. I still have the resolution that you gave me that day. Before I start, I just want to say that I really like that song, June is Busting Out All Over. I think that's from Oklahoma, am I right? And coincidentally, I was born... What? Oh, Carousel. Oh, I was born in Oklahoma, so the wrong. So I thought, but I wanted to say that it's really nice to hear songs that you can actually understand the words. Yeah, because I may not know the words, but I understood every one of the words. So thank you for having me. As Bill said, I've been in the legislature for the last 15 years. Some of you may have known my husband, Eric Muñoz, who was a trauma surgeon at University Hospital in Newark. One of the gentlemen came up to me and said he worked with him at UMDNJ. He had a sudden death in March of '09, but I had been very, very involved with him in the community of Summit, and so after his passing, which was, like I said, a sudden death, I was elected to take his spot. And I'm proud to serve in Legislative District 21 for this past 15 years, and I hope to continue to do so. I've lived in Summit for 34, going on 35 years, raised 5 children there. Unfortunately, none of the children still live in Summit, but one lives in New Jersey. I have a son in Florida, a son in Connecticut, a son in Morristown. He's in training at University Hospital as a trauma surgeon following in his father's legacy. So I hope none of you ever need his services because, they save lives, but they'd rather not have to have that opportunity because that means that you've been in an accident. It's really great to be here and to hear about so many of you and what you've done. My father was a Korean War vet, and my mother was a U.S. Cadet Corps nurse. And she spent her 4 years of high school during World War II. And when the call came that they needed nurses, my mother joined the U.S. Cadet Corps. And they actually changed the face of nursing in the United States. Before that, there wasn't a real formalized education of nurses, and so they were the ones who led in the United States to change that. They never received veteran status, which they should have, but in my heart, she's a veteran. And so I'm the proud daughter of 2 veterans and certainly a proud American. So my big issues that as Bill said, I'm the budget officer. We're very much right now involved in passing the New Jersey state budget. But the other issues that I have always focused on, obviously, are healthcare delivery, domestic and sexual assault. I was assigned to by our Chief Justice, Stu Rabner, to the Ad Hoc Committee on Domestic Violence, and we worked together, a group of 25 of us, who worked, from law enforcement and the judiciary, the legislature, on a bipartisan, bicameral basis, to look to see how we could improve the issue of domestic violence in the sense of how it's approached, how we can make it better for the victims of domestic violence. And so I worked really hard on that, to make sure that the municipal judges and municipal prosecutors had the right approach to the victims so that they were treated with dignity and respect. One of my greatest accomplishments, in my view, is that I was the prime sponsor of and got past the ban on underage marriages, which was intended to protect young people, in particular majority women, from having to be subjected to marriages for which they didn't want to partake in, but were forced into either by religious reasons or in some cases for immigration status reasons. And these were young women who were being asked to marry men as old as 35 when they were 15. And so we passed that in New Jersey. We were the second state in the nation to do so. Colin, very funny, asked me how we're going to keep you what am I doing to keep you in New Jersey? Well, I'm sure all of you are following what's going on with Stay New Jersey. Stay New Jersey is a program that is going that I voted for and has passed. It's still a work in progress, let me put it that way. It is a program that's intended to decrease your property taxes for seniors. The issues are complex because some of the stipulations of the legislation include that we have to have a surplus. Excuse me, I'm just going to have this. We're going to need a surplus in the state budget of at least 12%. And our surplus is less than 12% currently. Right now, I talked about the budget and our need to pass the budget. For the last 3 budget cycles, we have worked on a structural deficit. In other words, we have spent more than we've brought in revenues. How does that work? Unfortunately, what that means is that we take from the surplus. I'm sure over the last few years you've heard about our massive surplus that we had in the state of New Jersey, and that's somewhat misleading because over $4 billion of those dollars were borrowed, which means we have to pay them back, and $4 billion of those are federal monies, which we will not get again. So this year we have over a $2 billion budget structural deficit. We had over $2 billion structural deficit last year, which meant we took from the surplus, and the year before. So as as the budget officer for my caucus, we're looking at that. There's not a lot of, unfortunately, we don't see a lot of transparency in the process toward the end of the process. And what I mean by that is this. Many of you have heard of things such as Christmas tree items or pork. These are called legislative add-ons. And unfortunately, what happens is at the end, certain legislators put in resolutions, and we end up with over $1 billion in legislative add-ons. So again, we're in the process of working on this now. I am a very committed person in the budget committee. We do a lot of questioning of every single department, and that's been important because I think that it's important for all of you as the residents of New Jersey to know about the budget, about where the money is spent, and how we can better spend that money, how we can be better stewards of your money, so that we can allow you to stay in New Jersey. So besides, Stay New Jersey is one thing that we're working on. This will be, and I brought the article in the Star Ledger, but again, it's very complex because there are already 3 programs in place. The Anchor program, which many of you, I'm sure, benefited from, and that will remain in place. That is going to remain in place, for as long as for the foreseeable future. And then the Jersey Freeze and now Stay New Jersey. So it's how we're going to coordinate those 3 programs to best make it manageable for the people and for our budget. Again, it's a multi-billion-dollar expense, and so we have to figure out the best way to do this. The other thing is that I have been working on, as I said, I'm also the longest serving member of the Health Committee. I think it's really imperative to have people on the Health Committee who understand healthcare delivery. I'm the only registered nurse in the entire legislature, and I think that's really important that we have people in the legislature who understand healthcare delivery. I have supported and will continue to support increased reimbursements for Medicare and Medicaid payments. You know, as I said, many of you knew my husband, Eric, my youngest son's a surgeon, my oldest son's a surgeon, and I see firsthand how the insurance companies are getting in the way of our healthcare delivery system. And we have to make sure that the insurance companies, that you get the health care that you deserve, that when the physicians and or the advanced practice nurses prescribe a treatment, a medication, whatever it is that you need, that happens. And I'll give you an example of something that I've recently introduced as a bill because it hasn't passed yet. But you know, many of the insurance companies down code when they submit your claim. So in other words, I go to the dermatologist. Colin, I'm part English, part Irish, part Scottish. So I have this red hair, freckle face. So it takes a while to check for all this skin, whatever, for any kind of changes that may need intervention. Unfortunately, some of the insurance companies are down coding the amount of time that providers can take to look at a patient. They're saying that it only takes 17 minutes, it doesn't take 29 minutes, and so they're reimbursing the physicians and the providers at a lower rate. So it is illegal to upcode, which means it is illegal to say you did something that you didn't do. So I put in legislation to make it illegal to downcode. Because if it's illegal to upcode, why shouldn't it be illegal to downcode? Because what we're doing is we're hurting the providers and the patients. My dermatologist no longer takes patients who are covered by Aetna as a result. And so this puts a burden on all of you. So again, we pay attention to the things that are important to you. And in healthcare, it's increasing Medicare reimbursement, increasing Medicaid reimbursement, and making sure that I can look at issues and how we can better address access to healthcare. Some of you have heard me speak before. As an advanced practice nurse myself, I am not certified as one, but I have the education of one. It's like I just chose, when I had those 5 kids, I chose not to go any farther. But advanced practice nurses in the state of New Jersey since 1991 have been allowed to prescribe, diagnose, treat, and refer that they have. The only obstacle they have to full practice is that they must sign a contract with a physician, MD or DO, it's called a joint protocol, for prescriptive authority. And that means that when they write a prescription for which they are well educated and trained and certified and experienced in, that they have to have a contract with a physician in order to do this. Doesn't mean they have to talk to the physician. It doesn't mean that the physician has to even be in their same field. But this puts a burden on the healthcare delivery system because most of them are paying a fee in order for this privilege, which means that that's an added cost to healthcare. The FTC has said it's an unnecessary burden. This was 1991. We have had zero complaints about advanced practice nurses and their ability to write prescriptions. So, like I said, the psychiatric nurses are the most impacted in this regard. And as we know, we have a mental health crisis in this country. We have a shortage of mental health providers, and these nurses are certified and ready to provide, and they are doing that. But one nurse in the southern part of the state, South New Jersey, she is paying $1,000 a month for the privilege of writing prescriptions for her patients. Now, again, my 2 sons could be the contract, and they know nothing about psych drugs. So this is a burden. I've been working on this issue. It would increase your access to healthcare, and it would help to decrease costs. Unfortunately, the nurses only get 85 cents on the dollar. I think that would be unfair, but that's the way it is. And the majority of them are females. 90% of the advanced practice nurses are females. But regardless of how you look at it, whether it's a gender discrimination, it still would increase access. I think that's critically important. I also want to speak to my office and my office's ability to provide services to all of you. Many of you met Mark Doherty, he's in the back of the room, and I believe that Lisa came to speak to some of you at the chamber, I think, or Rotary, thank you. You know, 50%, I would say 50% of our job is constituent services. We are there 9 to 5 every day that's not a holiday. So if you hear on the radio that one of our radio commentators says, call your legislator's office at 7:30 in the morning, they go, and they're not answering their phone, it's because the office isn't open yet. But call from 9 to 5, our office will always answer the phone and will always get back to you. For everything from, if you have an issue with the Motor Vehicle Commission, with disability claims, with, the list goes on and on. We were the unemployment insurance office, solved unemployment issues for hundreds, if not thousands of constituents who were whose backs were against the wall because they weren't getting their unemployment. Mark and Matt from my office and Lisa from my office worked around, tirelessly during that time. We kept our offices open during COVID because they were able to be separated by space. And they worked and they worked and they worked, and they got people the unemployment that they deserved. So we work on all of these issues. I want everyone to know that you can call us about these issues. That is a great part of what we do. Overdevelopment is a big issue for everybody in New Jersey. All of my municipalities. I have a package of 6 pieces of legislation that addresses the issue in what I feel is a fair way, so that we look at it as a state as a whole. As a member of the Budget Committee, when our DEP commissioner was speaking to us, and we talked about flooding issue, which is another great issue. Those of you who live in Berkeley Heights know that you have an issue with flooding. Those of you who live in Long Hill know that you have an issue with flooding. And we have mandates of building and building and building in areas that were formerly permeable land. An example is in Westfield, Williams Nursery. If any of you are members of Echo Lake Country Club, Cranford, Westfield, Springfield, all go down into that basin. Williams Nursery used to be obviously a nursery with all permeable land. They're now building 169 units there. So I would expect that we're going to have a flooding issue. And our commissioner admitted that there was an issue. So I will continue to work to make reasonable, affordable housing decisions in the state. We all recognize the need for affordable housing. It is how it's being done and how it's being mandated that's an issue. And we are now in a new part of the process. We have increased the number of units that have to go in. And again, we're the most densely populated state in the nation with a lot of flooding issues. District 21, Springfield, we no longer represent Cranford, Berkeley Heights, Long Hill, all in District 21, all have seen tremendous flooding problems. Garwood never flooded until they built over 300 units next to the train station. And then I think it was Ida, the water was up to the trestle of the train tracks. That's an issue. So how do we deal with that? We deal with it by having a plan that looks at where we should be building and how we should be reasonably building affordable housing. The other thing I want to talk about is school funding. School funding, by getting more state funds to fund our schools, allows your property taxes to remain lower, because the state is helping to fund the schools. Almost all the districts in District 21 have seen an increase in school funding. And so I will continue to work to make sure that the schools in New Jersey, in District 21 and across the state get adequate funding. 140 schools got a cut in their funding, and it's a big problem for them because they've already passed their school budgets, and now in some cases, they're millions of dollars less than what they expected. And they're laying off teachers. There's certain school districts across the state that there are no sports programs, there are no after-school programs, and the quality of your schools reflects positively for the the value of your property. You know, your property owner, your value of your homes goes up as the quality of your schools go up or remain up. And so we have to keep an eye on that. We've been fortunate in District 21 that we have seen, funding increase in our school districts, and so I will continue to advocate for that. And the other thing is, I will continue to work with the business communities on bringing businesses to the state of New Jersey. You know, when we talk about the budget and we talk about the taxes, and I'm sure a lot of you, obviously, you're very tuned into what's going on. It's very obvious by talking to all of you. That the corporate business tax was sunsetted in December with a promise, to the corporations that they would, we wouldn't have a corporate business tax, and immediately was proposed. It's called a corporate transit fee. A fee is a tax, and it will be imposed on businesses that make over $10 million a year, which are a number of businesses in New Jersey, but these are businesses that can move out of state. We have to be mindful that we have to keep New Jersey business friendly. Businesses bring in a lot of taxes for the state, but they also bring in business for the state. When we talk about, the pharmaceutical companies, and as they leave, we're getting not only a business drain, but a brain drain from the state of New Jersey. How am I doing with time? Good? I love what I do. I'm very involved with, I go to, I hardly ever miss a meeting unless it's a family emergency, and I've committed to all of you. I'm glad to be here today. Happy to take questions, and I hope that this answers some of your questions.
I'd like to ask those who have questions to please come up and sit in these chairs. And I'd like to say that I personally dealt with Assemblywoman Muñoz's office, and they responded to me in a courteous, quick, and competent fashion. And they were a great help. So I have a warm feeling about her and her office.
Thank you, sir.
How do we find out what the requirements for affordable housing are? Every time I've asked at town council meetings, what is the income that is needed to qualify, or minimum income, or whatever, nobody comes up with an answer. All they come up with is say, well, it's affordable. I said, well, my house is affordable to Bill Gates. Right. So, I mean, the statement they give back is like meaningless, as if they don't even know. So how do we find this out?
Mark is going to be able to help me with this. And the other thing I want to say about affordable housing is we've had, John Bramnick. I serve obviously with Senator John Bramnick and Michelle Matsakoudas, who's from New Providence. And John and I had a roundtable, a meeting about this. And, one of the questions that was asked in Mountainside was, the affordable housing that's being built in our community, can we be eligible for that? Wouldn't we like for you to be able to stay in your community? And the answer is there's a lottery for that. But I think, Mark, do you have an answer on, I don't actually know off the top of my head the number for what that is, or if there even is a number.
So, affordable housing.
Yeah.
Affordable housing requirements are different for where you live. So the state has different thresholds, and the same thing for the price of the unit. But if you have for a specific town, I can certainly look it up and get back to, if anyone is interested, reach out to our office and. I am sure it is somewhere buried on a website. I might be able to pull it quicker because we have liaisons throughout the different departments in each department, but I could certainly try and figure out if there's just a general website of the threshold requirements.
What town do you live in, sir? What town do you live in? Berkeley Heights. We can find that out for you.
We get that.
Yeah.
I live in Basking Ridge, which is in District 21.
It is.
And, it's good to have you as my rep. On the keeping the seniors in New Jersey, it's a bit of a mess and a muddle. What is it possible to get some sort of dedicated financing for the integrated program to keep property taxes down for seniors so that we're not dependent on, if there's money left over in the budget, then maybe we'll see that.
That's an excellent question, and it is a bit of a muddle. And again, this article is from Sunday, June 2nd, Star Ledger. This is just the recommendations that have been made on how to administer these three programs. And you're absolutely right. The premise of the program is based on the fact that we will, if we have that money. And they pushed the start date out to 2026, which not coincidentally is after the next election, gubernatorial election, which is, right now we would not meet the criteria for providing this program. Again, you have to have a 12% budget surplus, and we do not have a 12% budget surplus. And as I said at the very beginning, we are taking from our surplus every year. So the dedicated source is through the general fund right now, which is dependent on spending. So if we were to spend less money on certain things and make different concessions within the budget, we would therefore be able to keep that surplus at 12%. Now, there's a possibility, and I've heard this, that they may change that requirement of 12% and maybe lower it. But it is anticipated to cost the state over $1 billion. So just so you all know, the budget this year is $56 billion. Last year it was a $54 billion budget. I'm not making this partisan, but when Governor Christie left, it was a $36 billion budget. So we've gone up $20 billion in 6 years. That's a huge hike. So, again, and some of that money is borrowed, and some of that money was federal money that we're not going to get again. So we have to be mindful of that. So, we're looking at ways to save money in the budget so if we can save money, and there's things that we've done in this budget that are really commendable. Paying into the pension fund, from starting back in the 90s when our governors in every party did not make the contribution into the pension fund was a problem and has created a problem. And we have now required, and we are paying our obligation. When they say they're paying the full pension obligation, they're paying the percentage that they're required to pay. But as we have to look at the budget in full and say, where can we make changes in the budget so that we can get to that surplus so that we can do this? Now, that being said, the anchor program will remain. There has been a promise. The anchor program's in place. The anchor program is for buyers, for owners and renters as well. The Stay New Jersey is only for people who own their homes, not for renters, as is the senior free. Right now, the anchor program and the senior frees are both expected to stay in place. It's the Stay New Jersey that right now we're not sure what's going to happen. They're working on it. We'll see what happens. But I know we committed in this budget, I think it's $200 million toward it, but we need a lot more than $200 million.
Rich Lander, Berkeley Heights. In 2023, I became aware of something New Jersey is doing to keep us here, and they got this $100,000 exemption on your New Jersey income taxes. So make sure you're aware of that. My real question, though, was sanctuaries. What is this state's policy on sanctuary, and how does that affect the state and local budgets?
That's a good question. I probably can't adequately answer that question. I do not think, and Mark help me, did Governor Murphy create, I don't think we're a sanctuary state. We are a sanctuary state. It doesn't have any legal bearing. So those of you who live in New Providence know that a bus came to New Providence and they went right to New York City. So, right now it's like the NGOs, the non-government organizations that are providing the services. So I don't know, I can't tell you off the top of my head what the impact on the budget is, except that it's, collectively it costs money. I mean, I don't know exactly. We can get that information for you, though.
This is a good one, I have two sons, and it's good to compare the two of them. One lives in Berkeley Heights, lives up on Cinnamon Ridge, and has a house that's pretty good size. I'll leave it at that. My younger son had just moved down 3 years ago to Huntersville, which is just north of Charlotte in North Carolina. They both have about the same size house. They both live in a nice area which are both very high-rated school districts. In fact, the school district in North Carolina, where my younger son's at, is actually rated higher than Berkeley Heights. So it's not because the schools are crappy down there. And you say, well, wait, what's going on? The property tax is mind-boggling. The property tax that my younger son pays is 1/4 of what the one in Berkeley Heights pays for. That's in real money, you know, it's like 5-6 grand versus 20 grand. I'm just trying to figure out how can it be that much different? So.
That's an excellent question. It's a very complex answer, obviously. Our property taxes are intended to fund public education. However, I would argue that New Jersey probably has too many levels of government. We are a state that is 1/4 the size of the state of Pennsylvania. And we have 4 times as many municipalities. And in New Jersey, we believe in home rule, has a municipal attorney, a labor attorney, a school attorney, a bonding officer, an engineer, all of whom are paid. And so the costs to New Jersey are extraordinary. Now, if you look at the state of New Jersey, you could almost argue that we're 2 separate states. If you go south of 195, it's mostly county government. County with more consolidations, more groups of people who, it's a different form. In northern part of New Jersey, north of 195, it's municipal government. Union County has 3 levels of law enforcement. We have municipal, we have county, we have corrections. We have multiple levels of law enforcement, all which have to be funded. So it's a very complex, and nobody, if you look at it, in the time that I've been in office, 15 years, there's been one consolidation, which was Princeton. Princeton Borough and Princeton Township consolidated and became one. So we went from 565 municipalities in the state of New Jersey to 564. I represent, District 21, we represent Chatham Borough and Chatham Township. When we discuss whether or not Chatham Borough and Chatham Township, they share a school, should be one township. The issue that has been brought to my attention is that the people who live in the borough have access to the train station parking lot, and those who live in the township, I swear to God, that's what I've been told. Yeah, it's true. And so the question, so they don't want to consolidate because then it would open up the parking lot at the train station. Now, whether that's the only reason, I don't know. We fortunately now represent both the borough and the township. Last legislative session, we represented just the township, the borough. The time before that, when I first got in, we represented just the township. So what happened was, when we went to an event at Chatham High School, you had 6 legislators representing one school. So we'd have, at the time, it was Senator Kane and Senator Cody, Assemblywoman Muñoz, and Assemblyman McKeon. All 6 of us would show up because, nothing wrong with that, except that it would make more sense. Actually, there was a mayor there, Bruce Harris, who suggested, and I spoke to the Commissioner of Transportation at the time, Jamie Foxx, who's since unfortunately passed away. There is a train station where the new Ivy has been built, and to reopen that train station, which would give access to the township for trains, et cetera. But that's a long answer to, it's a good question, but we have, when things happen in other states, like I said, one son lives in Florida, one son lives in California. They have a superintendent of schools where my son lives, which is in Boca Raton, Florida. The superintendent is a superintendent for 385 schools versus, Warren, which only has a K through 8, has a superintendent for K through 8, a principal, a vice principal. So we have multiple levels. And I would probably argue that it takes political courage to try to change this. I have no children or relatives in the state employed by the state. Now, my second son said to me, that's not true. Max Muñoz, my 31-year-old son, gets a paycheck from Rutgers because he's a surgical resident. He makes less than minimum wage. And I said, that doesn't count. But, there's a lot of people who employ their relatives in the state of New Jersey, and they don't want to take that away. So,
Your answer was that there's just many people in layers.
there's layers and layers of government, and I think that we could do a better job of that, in my opinion, in my humble opinion.
Hi, thank you for coming. Mike Martin, Chatham Township. It's all true. I shovel the money out the window.
Yeah.
Any event, two questions. What is the status of the windmills off of New Jersey coast? There's been issues about funding, people withdrawing, blah, blah, blah. And if you could update the group on that, thank you.
Well, as many of you know, it was I think a Danish company, or was it a Danish company and they withdrew the proposal, which ended up costing us $200 million. They were supposed to give us we gave them $300 million, and they gave us $100 million back. There's been a lot of controversy, obviously, about this, and a lot of the controversy comes from the shore towns, because no matter how you look at it, those windmills, that energy has to get to the shore. So they have to go through the shore towns. So there's been a tremendous amount of opposition from the shore towns. I would argue that we have to, use American innovation and American knowledge and good sense to create energy efficient delivery of energy efficiency. To mandate that you have to have an electric vehicle within X number of years when you don't see it's happening. Let's look and see what the innovative ways are that we can create renewable energy. For instance, I was, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in Linden. It's called the Linden Renewable Energy Project. And what they're taking is food waste. They're taking food waste from New York City, and from around the state of New Jersey, and it's called an anaerobic digester, and it's being converted into gas, into liquid gas, which will then go into your homes as liquid gas. So that's an innovation that will serve two purposes. Number one, we know that food waste creates methane, which is part of a contributor to what to the climate changes that we're seeing. Number two, it will also deliver liquid gas so that people can continue to maintain those gas stoves that they like in their homes, which are, as a person who unfortunately is living in a house right now with an electric stovetop, it's not as easy to cook as it is with gas. So, but here we have a solution that's innovative and works to solve two problems. Now, we should be open-minded to these innovations, and I support that. I'm working on legislation to actually capture the methane that we see from the farms, and that methane can be captured and also converted to liquid gas. And so there's innovation. We have so many smart people in this room and across this nation. This country has been built on innovation and smart people. Let's use that rather than mandating policies that we can't reach. I live right now, I sold, Miguel's here, he was my neighbor. I live in a rental right now. I moved from my house, a half a mile from where I was. There's no charger in my garage. If I had an electric car, I would be unable to charge my car. I have a sister who lives in Naples, Florida, in a very high-end place. It's a high-rise on the beach. There are no electric chargers in her building. So, we have, technology has not caught up, and infrastructure has not caught up with policy. We have to be mindful of this. My husband and I lived in New York City when when we first were married, and it was hard enough to find a parking spot. He would drive around in his 1976 Volvo, and for like 20 minutes after working, a 36-hour shift and couldn't find a parking spot. So we have to be mindful of making sure that infrastructure matches what policy is, and that's, I think that's important. I have 5 more minutes because I have to be somewhere else. I'm sorry.
more and more medical facilities in New Jersey are being bought by hedge funds. The emergency room at Morristown is. And it seems to me that every time you go to the ones they're bought, there's more tests being ordered and there's a shorter times. The idea of hedge funds with a full profit and health doesn't sort of mix. Is there any way the state can work with that?
You know, unfortunately, healthcare in the United States is changing, and it's changing, in my view, not for necessarily for the better. It's changing for the better in innovations in the way they treat people. You know, I'll tell a personal story. My grandson, who just turned 4, had a brain tumor, diagnosed at 5 months. He just had his 5th neurosurgery, but they were able to map exactly where the cells were that were causing his seizures. Excellent. However, that being said, the problems with healthcare delivery is the doctors are being told you have 12 minutes to see a patient. My son in Florida, an orthopedic surgeon who is a spine surgeon, who really would choose not to do spine surgery if he could. I broke my back twice already. I was treated with a back brace. He is forced, because of, again, insurance companies getting in the way, to do a peer-to-peer review before he can prescribe a back brace. Well, this delays your health care. It's a delay in health care because now when he arrives at his office at 8 a.m., there's already 6 patients waiting inside the office, waiting to be seen. He has to call a person who could be an advanced practice nurse, and I've told you all, I'm very supportive, but doesn't know anything about spine surgery, or a psychiatrist who knows. It's not peer-to-peer, it's just healthcare provider to a person. In order to prescribe a back brace, this has got to change. So I agree with you, it's where the money is. And it's, if you look at right now in New Jersey, there's health groups that just keep getting bigger and bigger, and they say it's for, what's it called? When you have economies of scale. It's economies of scale that we can purchase products for a lesser amount, but it's impacting healthcare. I have not heard one person say they had a good experience in an emergency room. And now they're sending everyone to urgent care. Urgent care are ER doctors who, nothing wrong with that, but there are people that should be, in hospitals. I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know that there's anything that the state can do. I think it's going to be a federal issue. And what I'm seeing is a lot of dissatisfaction in the young doctors. We always took great pride in the fact that in America, you had to be very intelligent, and you still do, to become a doctor. But when you start to say, you're not going to make a living like you used to, even though you work, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, because the reimbursement rates, and if you're a Medicaid provider, the reimbursement rates are really terrible. So again, that's a federal issue, sir, and I think that as a state, we just keep seeing more and more consolidations, and I don't think it's good for the people, for the patients, or for the providers. One last is Miguel, and sorry, Steve. I wouldn't miss Miguel because he's my friend and neighbor, and I know he'll be kind to me.
Well, Assemblywoman Muñoz, first of all, thank you for your service,
thank you.
and thank you for your family's service. Recently, Governor Murphy approved a 9.9% change in the property tax cap for certain financially strapped districts. Granted, it's just for certain districts, but what can you and the Assembly do to ensure that this isn't the opening salvo in an attempt to change the 2% cap, which has been around now for 14 years?
Well, I agree with you, and the problem with that 9.9% increase in that property tax cap is that now sets the threshold for the next budget. So now that again, what I talked about with the school funding, that there were 140 districts who can't meet budget because they didn't get money from the state to meet that budget. So now they've been permitted, you're right, for this year only, to do that 9.9, but the problem is, as you acknowledge, is we have now got that threshold. Statute still says it's 2% cap. Enrollment issues, and that's where those exceptions are in place. So we understand that. So that bill is just for 1 year. Let's hope that it doesn't get extended another year. And I did not vote for that. Yeah, I didn't, because again, it's setting the threshold at 9 point, up, so if, so a dollar to $1.09, now instead of being $1.02 is your threshold, $1.10 is your threshold. And, that's problematic for many of these municipalities. I agree with you 100%, but I did not vote for that. You're last. Yeah, you're last. Only because Miguel and my husband, both Puerto Rican heritage, were great friends, and his daughter and my daughter are 6 days apart, and we're great friends growing up.
They passed each other in the hospital.
Yeah, right.
Hi.
Hi.
Actually, I was just in Spain with my son, and we rode from Madrid to Barcelona on the bullet train.
Okay.
Reminded me of the Erie Lackawanna. But that's what I really wanted to ask you, but I don't think you have time to explain why we don't have bullet trains. So I'll ask you a simpler question, which is more complicated.
Yeah.
There is a technology, and I think you'll be familiar with this question. There is a technology called a smart gun where only the owner can fire the weapon. James Bond has had this for 35 years. Anyway, this technology was available a long time ago. And a long time ago, a well-meaning legislator in New Jersey passed a law, the legislator, that as soon as the smart guns were sold in New Jersey, that would make non-smart guns obsolete and you couldn't sell them anymore. The result is that there has never been a smart gun sold in New Jersey. So my suggestion to Nancy a while ago was, is there something we could do about this? Modify the law, repeal it, because once we get smart guns in, that could change a lot of problems and would improve the health of a lot of future people. So, is there anything you can tell us about the smart gun legislation?
There's nothing I can tell you about the smart guns. I can tell you that as a person who was a trauma nurse and who also believes in Second Amendment rights, I believe in a balanced approach to guns. I believe in gun safety. I believe that we should do whatever we can at the same time while respecting people's right to own a gun. And I do know that legislation is still around. I know that there are no smart guns in New Jersey. And,
You can own a smart gun, nothing's stopping them.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that is I like to think I'm a balanced person. People who have, how do I put this? I don't want to see anybody shot accidentally or on purpose in way of malice. And I support good legislation regarding that, while also I believe in the right to own a gun with background checks and safety things in place. And I do believe that people should go for training because, you're right eye or left eye dominant. People don't even know that. Everyone thinks they're right-handed, they're right eye dominant. I'm left eye dominant, even though I'm right-handed. So I think that we need those in place. I can't give you an answer about the smart guns because I don't have legislation to do it, but I will certainly.
It hasn't been repealed yet.
No.
Okay.
I will look into it, though.
Thank you.
Okay. How's that? Well,
I'm sure you've all been very impressed by her ability to address any question honestly, openly, so thank you very much, Nancy. You've already seen one of these.
I'm going to put it with
Now
my
you
other.
can, you can.
Well, I have another one, so I still have the other one, so I'm going to put them to, I already have one, and I still have it, and I'm going to put it together with my other one, so thank you very much.
An old guard salute.
Hold on, I'll take my glasses. Okay, thank you.